In September 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union invaded Poland, beginning the deadliest war in history. Despite a series of fierce defensive battles, including in Gdansk, at the Bzura River, and the defense of Warsaw, Poland was defeated in October 1939. The country was taken into occupation, but Poles continued the fight. The government moved first to Paris and then to London. Polish soldiers, seamen and airmen left the occupied territories to form or join Allied divisions, creating the fourth largest Allied army to fight in Europe. Many of those who remained behind organized resistance. The Polish underground state was one of the largest resistance organizations in Europe, providing assistance, gathering intelligence, and carrying out sabotage missions. Żegota, a resistance aid council, helped the Jews in occupied Poland. The Home Army was active throughout the war, numbering over 300,000 soldiers, and its largest operation was in the Warsaw Uprising in August 1944. Jewish fighter groups in Poland were the first in Europe to rise up in arms against Germans in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in April 1943. Polish mathematicians played a key part in cracking the Enigma code, while secret intelligence agents provided invaluable information. A mine detector invented by a Polish engineer was used to great success at El Alamein. Another Polish engineer hacked the German missile program and managed to smuggle out key components of V-2 ballistic missiles. It was people like Jan Karski and Witold Pilecki that would inform the world of the German atrocities being committed in the camps. Polish divisions were formed in France in as early as autumn 1939. Even after the Battle of Dunkirk and subsequent evacuation of Allied forces to Great Britain, Polish troops joined the French army in continuing to fight the German invaders. In North Africa, Polish soldiers fought side by side with British and Australian regiments in 1941 to defend the city of Tobruk. It was there that German panzer divisions were stopped in open battle for the first time. The defenders did not give up, and the city was eventually relieved by British forces. In June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union, forcing it to switch to the Allied camp. The Sikorski Agreement was thus signed to muster an army of 100,000 Polish soldiers, who had been Soviet prisoners and captives in the Gulag. This army made its way through Persia and Palestine, and finally back to Europe. When the Allied forces came to a halt in Italy after a spectacular initial success at Anzio, it was the Polish Second Army Corps that defeated the Germans at Monte Cassino, ending the long siege and opening the way to Rome. It was Polish troops who later liberated Ancona in July 1944 and Bologna in April 1 year later. As the tide of war turned, the Allies prepared to invade German positions in Normandy. D-Day became one of the most recognizable events in the war, and, sure enough, the Poles were there in the Navy and the Air Forces during the beach landing, and in the ground units in the subsequent fighting to trap the German units in the Falaise Pocket in August 1944. Afterwards, they went on to liberate Ypres, Ghent and Breda, finally taking the German naval base in Wilhelmshaven in May 1945. When the Allies carried out Operation Market Garden, the largest airborne operation during the war, the Poles were there, fighting on both sides of the Rhine in September 1944. Polish airmen were in combat the moment the war broke out. They distinguished themselves in 1940 in the Battle of Britain, with the famous Polish 303 fighter squadron taking down more enemy planes than any other. The amazing efforts of the Allied air forces inspired Winston Churchill's famous words, never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Polish airmen and airwomen would continue to serve in other parts of the world, not only in Europe, but also in North Africa and Asia, through to D-Day and Normandy, and final defeat of the Third Reich in 1945. Polish bomber squadrons carried out bombing raids until the end of the war. The Polish Navy engaged the enemy throughout the war, escorting convoys, transporting troops, and carrying out patrols. It was the Polish destroyer Piorun that eventually sighted and engaged, along with British destroyers, the German battleship Bismarck during the Battle of the Atlantic, before it was finally sunk by Allied forces the following day. The Polish Navy and troops were there in Narvik when the Allies fought for the strategic cargo port in Norway, and later during the invasion of Italy and D-Day in Normandy. Two Polish armies totaling over 300,000 soldiers fought alongside the Red Army to combat the Germans in the east. When the Allied Red Army entered Berlin in April 1945, Polish troops were there among them, and the white and red Polish flag fluttered over central Berlin, marking the final victory. Thanks to the Allied effort, the war ended on the 8th of May 1945, and Poland was there. And yet, when the Allies met to discuss the New World Order and to celebrate victory over Nazi Germany, Poland was not there. Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin decided that Poland would remain under Soviet influence, and the Iron Curtain separated the West from the East for the next 50 years. With 6 million Polish citizens perishing during the war, including 3 million Polish Jews, and over 1 million Polish soldiers fighting on all its fronts, Poland's fate was ultimately decided by others. It was only after 1989 that Poland became a free country again.